The Ohio River runs for nearly 1,000 miles. It carries everything that is given to it. In January of 2009, law enforcement in Evansville, Indiana spent weeks searching its waters for the body of a 17-year-old girl. They searched a landfill next, then a residential neighborhood, then abandoned properties on the city's outskirts. The man convicted of her murder gave 7 different accounts of what he did with her body. None of them led anywhere. Her name was Emily Carter. Evansville is Indiana's 3rd largest city, situated on a bend of the Ohio River near the borders of Kentucky and Illinois. It is not a city that draws national attention. It has schools, churches, neighborhoods that have stood for generations, families that have lived there for decades. Emily Carter was one of them. Born June 19, 1991, Emily was 17 years old at the start of 2009. She lived with her parents, Daniel and Laura Carter, and her 2 younger sisters in a home on the west side of Evansville. By all accounts, she was an ordinary teenager. She attended school. She had a close group of friends. She spent time on social media, primarily MySpace, a platform widely used by teenagers at the time. She was not in any known trouble. She was not considered a runaway risk. She was, every measurable sense, a normal girl living a normal life. What is known about her final weeks comes almost entirely from the accounts of people who knew her. Those accounts, as this investigation will demonstrate, do not always agree. What is agreed upon is this. In late January 2009, Emily Carter had recently ended a relationship with a 19-year-old named Jason Miller. The circumstances of that breakup are not fully documented. What is documented is that on January 24, 2009, Emily Carter left her home to meet him. She did not return. January 24, 2009, a Saturday. What happened in the next few hours would be told 7 different ways, and none of them would lead to her. At approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, Emily Carter left her family's home. She had told her parents she needed to resolve something with her ex-boyfriend, Jason Miller. The precise nature of what she intended to discuss has never been established. According to witness accounts, Jason Miller picked her up from in front of her home on his motorcycle. The time was approximately 5:30 p.m. What happened in the hours that followed became the central question of one of Indiana's most complicated criminal investigations. As the evening progressed, Emily's parents waited for her to come home. She did not. They attempted to reach her by phone. She did not answer. They contacted her friends. Her friends said she had gone with Jason Miller. At 11:45 p.m., Laura Carter, Emily's mother, called Ryan Brooks. Ryan Brooks was a close friend of Jason Miller's. He told her that Jason had dropped Emily off at her home. He said this had happened at midnight. There is a problem with that statement. When Laura Carter called Ryan Brooks, it was 11:45 p.m. Midnight had not yet occurred. Ryan Brooks told Emily's mother that Emily had been dropped off at midnight, but midnight was still 15 minutes away. This contradiction was immediate. He described an event that had not happened yet. And in that moment, before anyone knew what this case would become, something was already wrong. Emily's family, still unable to find her, began searching the streets of Evansville. Her father, Daniel Carter, arrived at Jason Miller's home, located on Linden Avenue in the city's north side, at 12:45 a.m. He received no satisfactory answers. At 2:10 a.m. on January 25th, the Carter family filed the first official missing persons report at the Evansville Police Department. Emily Carter, 17 years old, had been missing for hours. No one yet knew what had happened to her. 4 hours later, the family returned to the precinct and expanded the report, adding Jason Miller's name, home address, and contact information. A third report was filed at 1:30 p.m. on January 25th, 11 hours after the first. Evansville police did not initiate active search operations until approximately 17 hours after the first report was filed. That delay would later be scrutinized heavily in the media. It also contributed, in the years that followed, to a broader national conversation about how American law enforcement responds, or fails to respond, to reports of missing minors. In the days immediately following Emily's disappearance, the investigation moved slowly. Police began interviewing family members and friends. On January 27th, 3 days after Emily vanished, law enforcement held its first press conference. The Carter family simultaneously launched a public campaign to find their daughter. Tips began arriving. Some callers reported seeing a girl matching Emily's description in nearby cities, one in the Louisville metropolitan area, another further north. None of those sightings were confirmed. The case gained traction on social media, spreading primarily through direct peer networks. Within days, it had reached a significant portion of Evansville's young population. On January 29th, 5 days into the investigation, the court issued a judicial order sealing the active case file. This is a standard procedural measure in sensitive investigations. It restricts the public release of investigative materials. It also limits what the family is told. The following day, January 30th, more than 2,000 people gathered in downtown Evansville. They marched under a single banner: "We are all Emily." A second demonstration, organized for February 7th, drew an estimated 3,000 attendees. The crowd demanded a more aggressive investigation. The pressure on local law enforcement was becoming visible. On February 13th, 20 days after Emily's disappearance, Evansville police made their first arrests. Jason Miller, 19 years old, was taken into custody. 5 additional individuals were also detained as persons of interest, all believed to have some connection to Emily's disappearance. The investigation had arrived at its first turning point. February 14th, 2009, Valentine's Day. Jason Miller, 19 years old, sat across from investigators and confessed. He stated that he had killed Emily Carter. According to this first confession, Jason Miller struck Emily in the head with a heavy ceramic ashtray inside a residence on Linden Avenue, the same address where Emily's father had gone looking for her on the night she disappeared. He stated that following the assault, Emily died. He stated that he then transported her body to a location near the Ohio River and disposed of it in the water. He claimed he threw her body from an old railroad bridge, now a pedestrian bridge, that spans the river on the city's south side. On that same day, a second arrest was made. Ryan Brooks, the same friend of Miller's who had told Laura Carter that Emily was dropped off at midnight before midnight had arrived, was taken into custody as an alleged accomplice. Investigators alleged that Brooks had assisted Miller in disposing of Emily's remains. A third individual was identified and detained. He was a minor at the time of the crime, referred to in this documentary by the alias Tyler Reed. Based on Miller's confession, law enforcement mobilized a search operation along the Ohio River. Divers entered the water. Boats swept the current. Specialized search units were deployed. The search lasted from February 14th through March 16th, 2009, 30 days. The Ohio River yielded no trace of Emily Carter. Emily Carter's remains were not found. By this point, investigators were no longer trying to confirm a story. They were trying to understand which parts of it were lies. March 17th, 2009, 1 month after his initial confession, Jason Miller appeared before the court and changed his story. In this second version, Miller claimed he was not the one who killed Emily Carter. He named Tyler Reed, the minor who had been detained, as the person responsible. According to this new account, both Miller and Reed had attempted to sexually assault Emily. They had threatened her with a knife. Reed, Miller now claimed, had strangled Emily with his hands, and the body, Miller now said, had not been thrown into the river. It had been placed inside a garbage container near the residence on Linden Avenue. This version directly contradicted his first. In version 1, Miller killed Emily alone. In version 2, Reed killed Emily while Miller watched. In version 1, the body went into the river. In version 2, the body went into a dumpster. Investigators noted significant inconsistencies in how Miller described the events during this recounting. His timeline did not hold together. Certain physical details did not match the known layout of the residence. However, investigators acknowledged the account of the body being placed in garbage rather than thrown in a river was, logistically, more consistent with the forensic evidence available at the time. The river search had found nothing. If no body entered the river, that absence now made a different kind of sense. A new search operation was authorized, this time at the Tri-State Regional Landfill, which receives solid waste from the Evansville metropolitan area. Investigators calculated that if Emily's body had been placed in a garbage container on or around January 24, 2009, and that container had been collected and processed through the city's waste system, the remains could now be buried beneath an estimated 40,000 tons of compacted refuse. The landfill search produced no recoverable evidence. As the search operations continued, the circle of suspects widened. Mark Miller, Jason Miller's half-brother, was arrested and charged with involvement in the case. His girlfriend, Ashley Turner, was also charged. Investigators alleged that both had participated in the concealment and disposal of Emily Carter's body following her death. That brought the total number of individuals charged in connection with the case to 5: Jason Miller, Ryan Brooks, Tyler Reed, Mark Miller, Ashley Turner. Each denied varying degrees of involvement. Each provided a version of events that conflicted in some way with the others. A sixth line of inquiry emerged through Emily's father, Daniel Carter. Carter noted publicly that the father of a young woman who had been dating Jason Miller at the time of Emily's death had previously worked at a facility that handled the incineration of biological waste. Carter raised the possibility, cautiously and without accusation, that Emily's body may have been destroyed rather than buried. This theory was never confirmed by physical evidence. It remains to this day unverified. Also investigated, though never publicly charged, was a girl referred to in court documents as the comma minor, a young woman from a specific Evansville neighborhood who had been in a relationship with Jason Miller around the time of Emily's death. Investigators examined whether her family had any knowledge of what occurred on January 24th. No charges resulted from that inquiry. Over the course of 2009, law enforcement conducted searches across multiple locations in and around Evansville. The scale of the effort was, by any standard, extraordinary. Participating agencies and units included the Evansville Police Department, the Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Office, the Indiana State Police, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, specialized canine search teams, underwater dive units, helicopter surveillance crews from federal law enforcement, excavation equipment operators, the state's Emergency Management Division. At the peak of the operation, investigators estimated this was the largest coordinated search effort in the state of Indiana's documented history. The Ohio River was searched first, 30 days, finding nothing. The Tri-State Landfill was searched second, 40,000 tons of refuse, finding nothing. The search then moved to other locations. An abandoned lot in the neighborhood of Camas, a district on Evansville's outskirts, was excavated. Disused rail yard properties were examined. Abandoned mine shafts in the surrounding rural counties were investigated. 2 vacation properties connected to Emily's extended family were searched. Dry wells on rural parcels were inspected. Olive groves outside the county were searched on the basis of a single informant tip. Each site was formally cleared. None yielded human remains. The financial toll of the search operation became its own political issue. As the search expanded, the cost became impossible to ignore. Resources were stretched, and at one point, operations were forced to pause. The prosecution later sought reimbursement from the convicted parties, a figure exceeding $600,000, the estimated cost of all search operations combined. The operation paused formally on April 30, 2009. On September 30, 2009, a new judicial order authorized a search of a residential parcel in the Kama district of Evansville. That search, like the others, produced no results. In November 2011, nearly 3 years after Emily Carter's disappearance, the Indiana State Police Forensic Laboratory confirmed several significant findings. On a jacket belonging to Jason Miller, analysts identified biological material. That material was matched through DNA analysis to Emily Carter. Emily's blood was on Jason Miller's jacket. Additional forensic items were examined. On a roll of adhesive medical tape found at the Linden Avenue residence, analysts identified a mixed DNA profile containing genetic material from both Jason Miller and Ashley Turner. A length of electrical extension cord was also tested. That cord contained DNA consistent with both Mark Miller and Ashley Turner. Investigators theorized that the extension cord may have been used to bind or restrain Emily Carter. Ashley Turner, when questioned about these findings, stated that she had only entered the Linden Avenue address late that night and had not noticed anything unusual. Based on the forensic evidence, Ashley Turner was formally charged with desecration of human remains and criminal obstruction. Among the additional evidence cataloged during the investigation, a knife consistent with the type described in Miller's second confession, approximately 30,000 intercepted phone communications gathered under court-authorized surveillance, photographic documentation of the crime scene, and surveillance footage from a nearby building that Daniel Carter alleged showed Mark Miller leaving an address, contradicting the alibi provided for him that day. The footage was submitted to the court. Prosecutors determined the image quality was insufficient for evidentiary use. What the evidence confirmed, Emily Carter's blood was present at the scene. Multiple individuals had been inside the Linden Avenue residence around the time of her death. The precise sequence of events, what happened in what order and who did what, remained contested. In October 2011, more than 2.5 years after Emily Carter disappeared, criminal proceedings began in Vanderburgh County Superior Court. 90 witnesses were summoned to testify. 15 expert witnesses were prepared by the prosecution. The evidentiary record included DNA findings, intercepted communications, physical items from the Linden Avenue address, and the documented history of Jason Miller's multiple and contradictory statements. The courtroom was secured with an unusually heavy law enforcement presence. When defendants arrived, crowds gathered outside the courthouse. On multiple occasions, police lines struggled to contain the public pressure. Ryan Brooks made an obscene gesture toward the crowd on the steps of the courthouse on October 17th. On October 25th, Mark Miller and Ashley Turner arrived at court with their faces obscured, wearing ski masks and sunglasses. A woman in the crowd moved toward Mark Miller and had to be restrained by officers before a physical confrontation occurred. In the final week of October 2011, the mother of Tyler Reed was paid approximately $10,000 to appear on a nationally syndicated television program. She stated, on air, that her son was innocent and that he had no knowledge of where Emily Carter's body was located. The statement drew immediate and intense public criticism, both for its content and for the reported payment, which observers noted was significantly higher than the program's standard compensation for guests. The Carter family formally requested that the payment be seized and applied toward any financial judgments stemming from the case. Prosecutors subsequently announced they would move to garnish the funds. Inside the courtroom, at one point, Mark Miller looked directly at Emily's uncle and said twice without expression, "What's your problem?" The trial continued. In January 2012, the court issued its rulings. Before sentencing, the prosecution had publicly projected a possible sentence of 52 years in prison for Jason Miller. For the remaining defendants, prosecutors had indicated sentences ranging from 5 to 8 years. The court issued the following. Jason Miller convicted, sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in the Indiana Department of Correction, remanded to a facility in southern Indiana, prohibited by court order from residing in any city or county where members of the Carter family live, a restriction lasting 30 years. Ordered to pay $280,000 in restitution to Emily's parents and $30,000 to each of her sisters are for what the judgment described as the moral harm caused by the death and disappearance of Emily Carter. Ryan Brooks, no prison sentence, released. Mark Miller, no prison sentence, released. Ashley Turner, no prison sentence, released. The gap between what prosecutors had projected and what was ultimately sentenced for all parties produced an immediate and significant public reaction. Protest demonstrations erupted in Evansville, Indianapolis, and several other Indiana cities on January 24, 2012, the 3-year anniversary of Emily's disappearance, under the phrase, "Justice in Emily's name." Daniel Carter spoke publicly following the verdict. He stated that he would seek justice outside the state of Indiana if necessary. He referenced the possibility of filing a complaint before federal courts or international human rights bodies. He said plainly, "There is no justice here, not for us, and not yet." On November 23, 2013, nearly 5 years after Emily Carter's death, Ryan Brooks and Mark Miller jointly filed a civil claim against the Carter family, seeking reimbursement of court costs in the amount of $2,467. The families of Emily Carter's killers billed her parents for the cost of the trial. Jason Miller was transported to a correctional facility in southern Indiana. He was placed in a therapeutic housing unit, separated from the general population. Prison officials noted that other incarcerated individuals had made credible threats against Miller's life on multiple occasions. He was kept under additional supervision. On March 27, 2009, while in pretrial detention, Jason Miller had attempted to take his own life using the cord from a sweatshirt in the bathroom of the detention facility. He survived. According to correctional records and reports available to the press, Miller receives no visitors. He makes no phone calls. In 2020, records emerged showing that Jason Miller and Mark Miller had been involved in a financial dispute connected to a fraudulent mortgage application submitted using falsified documents. The dispute had preceded and possibly complicated the circumstances that brought both of them into contact with Emily Carter in January 2009. In June 2022, more than 13 years after Emily disappeared, a court issued a new ruling. Tyler Reed, now an adult, and his mother were each convicted of perjury for the testimony they had given during the 2011 trial. Both were sentenced to 2 years in prison. Both were fined $1,440. Both were ordered to pay the Carter family $15,000 each in civil damages. Tyler Reed had lied under oath. His mother had lied under oath. The lies they told in 2011 had contributed to the trial's inconclusive resolution. The full truth of what happened on January 24, 2009, the sequence of events inside the Linden Avenue residence, the precise roles of each person present, the exact words that were spoken, the moment Emily Carter's life ended, has never been established in court. As of the time of this documentary's production, Emily Carter's remains have not been found. In October 2011, while the trial was still underway, Emily Carter's grandfather drove to a parcel of land on the Evansville city limits. He was not acting on any new tip from investigators. He was acting on instinct, the instinct of a man who had spent 2.5 years unable to bury his granddaughter. On that land, he found a blanket. He found 2 large industrial garbage bags. Both were consistent with the type of materials described by defendants as having been used to wrap Emily's body. The discovery triggered a new authorized search of the area, land stretching between 2 adjacent communities on Evansville's western edge. A judge approved the search, despite the difficult terrain. That search, too, found nothing. Emily's parents testified during the trial. They described what the years following her disappearance had done to their family. They spoke of extended leaves from work. They spoke of ongoing medical treatment, prescription medications, recurring depression. They spoke of Emily's 2 younger sisters, girls who had been in school when this case erupted into national attention, who had struggled through their adolescent years under the weight of what had happened to their sister. They did not dramatize. They described. a mother who woke up every morning not knowing where her daughter's body was, a father who went back repeatedly to search land that had already been searched, a family that filed paperwork, attended hearings, read verdicts, and still, at the end of all of it, went home to a house with an empty room. They could not hold a funeral. They had no grave to visit. Jason Miller gave 7 distinct accounts of what happened on January 24, 2009. Not 2, not 3, 7. Each version contradicted the last. In one, he acted alone. In another, he wasn't the one who killed her. In one, her body entered the river. In another, it was thrown away like garbage. The location changed. The method changed. The truth did not appear in any of them. Investigators, prosecutors, and the court itself have characterized the cumulative record of Miller's statements as deliberately obstructive. Whether the confusion served a legal strategy, reducing the criminal liability of specific individuals, or whether it reflected a genuine disorder in Miller's memory and psychology, has never been determined. What is clear is this: every location Miller pointed to was searched. Every search was conducted at significant cost, in money, in personnel, in time. None of them found Emily Carter. Either Miller was lying every time, or he was lying most of the time, or he genuinely does not know where Emily Carter's body is. All 3 possibilities remain open. One of the people convicted of her murder has never, in any of his 7 accounts, provided information that led investigators to her remains. Emily Carter has been missing for more than 15 years. The Carter case produced lasting institutional changes in Indiana. The 17-hour gap between the first missing persons report and the initiation of active search operations became a documented policy failure, one that investigators, child welfare organizations, and legislators cited in the years that followed. Indiana updated its missing child response protocols to require immediate law enforcement activation upon the filing of a report involving a minor, regardless of presumed circumstances. The Carter family became public advocates for sentencing reform. They petitioned, publicly and formally, for the state legislature to consider a form of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for crimes of this nature, a measure that did not exist in Indiana's statutes at the time. The national political response was notable. Members of Indiana's congressional delegation met with the Carter family. State officials described their shock at the sentencing outcomes for Ryan Brooks, Mark Miller, and Ashley Turner. In the years since, Emily Carter's case has been referenced in academic literature on missing persons protocols, in law enforcement training curricula, and in at least 2 separate journalistic investigations into how American courts handle cases where the victim's remains are never recovered. It is studied, it is cited. Jason Miller is serving his sentence. His earliest possible release date, under Indiana's correctional review guidelines, remains subject to behavioral and programmatic assessments. He continues to have no recorded visitors, no recorded phone communications from the facility. Ryan Brooks was released following the trial. Mark Miller was released following the trial. Ashley Turner was released following the trial. Tyler Reed and his mother were convicted of perjury in 2022. They served their sentences. The Ohio River continues to run through Evansville. The landfill continues to receive the city's waste. The parcels of land that were searched in 2009, 2010, and 2011 have grown over. Emily Carter's parents still do not know where their daughter's body is. No new search operations have been publicly announced. No new confessions have been made. No new evidence has come forward. The case is technically closed. A conviction was obtained. Sentences were handed down. But a family cannot close what it cannot finalize. And the finalization of Emily Carter's story, the simple human act of bringing her home, has never happened. With a family still waiting, with questions that were never fully answered, with a river that gave nothing back. Somewhere in one of those 7 versions, there is a truth. It just hasn't been told. Emily Carter disappeared on January 24, 2009. She was 17 years old. Her remains have never been found. Jason Miller was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months. Ryan Brooks, Mark Miller, and Ashley Turner received no prison sentences. Tyler Reed and his mother were convicted of perjury in 2022. As of this documentary's production, the location of Emily Carter's body is unknown.